Good morning. Today is the day of the creation of the world, the 25th of Elul. It's also the 11th of September.
And Rabbi Gaffney's birthday.
Rabbi Gaffney's birthday and some other Jews' birthday. And the world's birthday. If the Rosh Hashanah is the 1st of Tishrei, was the 6th day of creation, so we count back 5 days and we're in 25th of Elul. Okay. So we're back to page 15, the last paragraph. הנה כמו שמתן תורה שהיה במעמד הר סיני, היה עילוי נפלא לגבי קיום התורה דאבות. And just as much as the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai was a greatly superior,
Where did you go to?
Tetvav, it's greatly superior to the way that the Avos kept the Torah. And what do we mean by that? So we said, last time we said it, and we didn't record it because I forgot to turn the microphone on. So remember we talked a little bit about what did it mean back then to talk about God's unity. So God's unity in the time of the patriarchs, when all there was natural religion. So God's unity was seeing beyond nature. It was seeing that beyond all the separate forces, there is a unity. And so that was the great faith that Abraham had. Abraham had to do a lot to break through this barrier. And the rest of the world was idolatrous. Why was it idolatrous? Because they couldn't see the unity in nature. So they worshipped separate powers, and each one they gave a talisman or an idol or whatever they did. From the time Matan Torah and on, unity of God is something entirely different. I mean, it's not. We're not saying that you don't have to break through the barrier of nature, but science has done that for us already. Like even science, the godless science already knows, is searching for unity. One of the big proponents of unity in phenomena, in figuring out how many phenomena are one thing, there were two great thinkers in the 19th and 20th centuries that did this. First one was Maxwell. He's a British co-patriot of yours. James Clerk Maxwell. And he saw all the phenomena of electricity. And he boiled everything down to 4 equations that describe every single form of electromagnetic radiation. And that's all you need. You need those 4 laws together, called Maxwell's 4 laws. They define, they will let you analyze any type of electromagnetic phenomena. That was a great thing. Although having 4 is not so, unifying, but it's unifying in the sense that he understood there was one thing behind all of this. So he needed 4 laws to. Really, the reason is because there's different ways that electromagnetic radiation pronounces itself in reality. The second great proponent of unity in science was obviously Einstein. And he spent the last 20 years of his life trying to unify gravity with quantum mechanics. Or another way of saying it is he tried to unify his brainchild, which was general and special relativity, with quantum mechanics, which he contributed to, but it wasn't just his. Now, probably the reason it wasn't successful is because the Rebbe writes in the letter that he had it all wrong. But that's a different problem. Like, how can it be that, today to say that general relativity is the wrong way to look at the cosmos is almost like saying 1 + 1 is not equal to 2, because every single scientist thinks that this is the only way to look at it. And the Rebbe, in a very important letter, he says that in 1906, Dirac, not Dirac, now I forget what his name is, I'm terrible with names, a very important French polymath who proposed a different theory than Einstein's, retaining the ether. Now the ether it's also very comfortable to retain the ether. One of the things that Einstein did was he threw away the ether, based on Michelson-Morley experiments and other things. But the ether is not meant to be something physical in the sense of something you can measure. It's meant to be like a conceptual way of looking at space. And the moment that he threw it out, it led him to general relativity. And the Rebbe says that if you follow the other trains of thought that were around in 1906, you arrive at a different theory of relativity, which does a much, much better job and is completely intuitive. General relativity is counterintuitive. There's nothing intuitive about it. If you send one twin into space, traveling at close to the speed of light, and the other twin stays on Earth, and they re-meet, and they meet again after 10 years, so you'll see that the twin on Earth is 10 years older, and the twin that was in space, when he comes back to Earth, only a minute of his life has gone by. So that's counterintuitive. It doesn't make any sense. But when you follow the other trains of thought that were in development, but they suffered from two things. One was that the guy who was developing it, why am I suddenly drawing a blank on his name? This French thinker, he passed away in 1906, and so he couldn't continue, obviously. And there was nobody to really continue his work because Einstein was gaining so much traction that there's a thinking in science that somehow the best theory always wins, but it's not true. There's a lot of politics involved, and so it's true that it has more of a tendency for the better theory to win. In any case, so in science today, everybody says nature is unified. There's one nature. It's not two different sets of rules. And we just have to figure out how to unify everything together and get to one set of laws. Surprisingly enough, Dafka, in Chasidut, there's an understanding that might not be the case. That nature might not be unified in the same way that human beings are not unified. I don't think like you think. And even though somebody may say the same laws of thought govern my thinking and your thinking, it may not necessarily be true. We may be functioning according to different rules of thought. And there's good reasons for it. Like why I would have a different set of rules than you would, because I grew up in America in the 1970s and you grew up in England in whenever it was. So in any case, so unity in nature is pretty much across the board now. Where is there no unity? There's no unity in what the Torah brought down. So what did the Torah bring down? The unity of what we would call the human consciousness. That there are many, many different opinions in the Talmud, and yet kulam eroe echad nitnu, that they were all given by one shepherd. That in the end, elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim, that these and these are the words of the living God. To see unity beyond the adversity and the dispute between different trains of thought, that is the great contribution to unity of the Torah. The Torah was able to do that. And so it unified, not by erasing anyone, not by saying, okay, that's a bad thought, don't think that, but rather by saying there is, if you are an adherent of the Torah's basic framework, you can come up with different pictures of reality, but they all fit into God's unity. And to see that and to be able to live in a unified way is exactly, meaning to live in peace, is exactly the message of unity in the Torah. In other words, today idolatry is not so much that somebody comes and worships an idol. That's just stupid. Like, nobody really believes that anymore. Today idolatry is when people hate each other so much that they're willing to kill each other. That's the equivalent of idolatry today. It's very important to know this, that if you can't respect the other person's legitimate opinion, not that he's trying to hurt you or something like that, but when there are legitimate points of view on something, you have to learn that Rashi and Ramban really do dispute, but they have legitimate opinions, and you can't play with it so that they're saying the same thing. They're saying two opposite things. But these two opposites are really part of one unified reality of God that comes out through the Torah. And the Torah is built that way so that these disputes are, in the end, illustrated and presented. Eventually you come to them. You extract them from the Torah. So that's a different level of unity. But in any case, when this great So we just looked at unity. You could look at a million things between the patriarchs and the giving of the Torah. Obviously, another very important one is in relation to the mitzvos. That the mitzvos now create a real change in the world, whereas before that they only created a transitory change, temporary change. עד שבהתעוררות מוחין הנהגים בשעת מתן תורה התחילו להסתלק מוחין הקודמים. Because of this, he says that the moment that this new mindset of the giving of the Torah was awakening, so the old mindset was leaving. כן, הוא הדרך זה ריחוק הערך ממה שנגלעת על ידי מתן תורה לגבי מה שהתגלה לעתיד על ידי משיח במהרה בימינו אמן, כמו שכתוב כי תורה מאיתי תצא חידושה של תורה. The same thing is going to be true about the Mashiach's Torah. And the Mashiach's Torah is Chasidus. It's not like we don't know at all what it's about. We know what it's about. And we know it's changing the way that you view Torah from beginning to end. So it's a different outlook on what a non-Jew is, it's a different outlook on what adversity is, it's a different outlook on what challenges in life are. It's a different outlook on history, it's a different outlook on everything. It changes everything. And that is it's akin with the giving of the Torah, how the giving of the Torah changed the mindset of the patriarchs. And this is what the Medrash says in Vayikra Rabbah at the end of Shmini, Ki Torah me'iti tetzeh, which is a verse in Isaiah, Torah will come out of me, and it says, Ki Torah chadasha me'iti tetzeh, or like he says here, the interpretation of the Torah will be new. Chidusha shel Torah, it will renew the Torah. It's not giving up on the old, in the same way that we didn't give up on what Abraham understood, idolatry. In fact, idolatry became the very most important mitzvah of all, because that's the number one lotas, and lotas are higher than prescriptive mitzvot, the mitzvot to say. So it's not going to give up on the old, obviously. It's the same Torah, it's the same mitzvos, but the whole interpretation will be different. So the first thing that's different is, what do we call this? We call this the inner dimension of Torah. The whole Mashiach Torah is the inner dimension of Torah. That's the name of it. And what does it mean? That there's a surface understanding of what you're looking at, and the inner dimension, the way to think about that there is unity here is to see that there is the external and the internal. And the unity shows up through the internal, not through the external. So the inner dimension of Torah was already revealed at Matan Torah. It was already given to the people when the Torah was given. But there it's what we call that it was perceived only, it was only given at the level of the Yechida, Pnimiyut Neshama, at the very highest level. I mean, it's a super conscious level. It wasn't conscious, they couldn't see it. The Rebbe's father has a saying in one of his letters to the Rebbe. He says that what was very internal, an inner dimension, became external as the generations went on, and what was very external became internal. What do we mean by that? That what was the experience of Mount Sinai? It was a very mystical, powerful experience. That was the external. And that experience was slowly moved into the inner core of one's being, meaning that we all have like a memory of this experience, but you can't see it anywhere. There's none of that anymore. You can't look outside and say, I see God speaking. I see thunder and lightning and the fire at the top of the mountain. Yeah, if you see it, you need some help internalizing the experience. On the other hand, what was internal at the time has become more and more revealed. So what was internal at the time? Two things. Two things were very internal. The most important one is halacha. From the experience of Mount Sinai, it was very hard to get a way of life, even though God spoke the 10 Commandments in a sense. that wasn't enough. You had to expand it to the entire Chumash and then to the Mishnah and to the Gemara. This has been expanding and revealing itself over the generations. But this thing that we received at Mount Sinai, the experience and the inner dimensions, which only the Yechida, the highest level of the soul, could perceive at the time, eventually will become known by the body itself. We have this principle that what was most on the inside, when it comes out, is most. It's like turning a shirt out inside out. So what was on the inside becomes the complete external, completely on the outside. וממילא יתגלה פנימיות אור אינסוף למטה כמו למעלה, ממש בחיצוניות העולמות, עד שבאש הגשמי יאיר ויתגלה בחינת יש אמיתי. And this will cause the true being, which is God, to be revealed in the world. Because that was the experience. Again, we don't mean all of God. We mean whatever was revealed at that time. So that will now become the normal experience of a person. In other words, if God is unity, then it explains why it says, Lo yisa goy el goy cherev. Because if you think that God is an idea, that unity is an idea, that oneness, God's oneness is an idea, you can kill one another. Because it's a nice idea, but now I need to take your food, I'm sorry. But if God becomes an experience, unity becomes an experience, I can't kill you because it's like killing myself. Where do we see that? Like one hand won't cut off the other hand. Like my two hands, they feel the experience, the unity of being part of one person. They experience my unity as a person. Of course, if I need to take it off to save the rest of the body, I might be able to do it. But I have to get over tremendous difficulties in order to do that. I mean, I really have to be convinced that there's no other way. I have to take off this finger. And then I might be able to do it to myself even, although most people can't. That's why you hire a surgeon. And you have to be put under in order for that to happen. But you have a sense of unity. Imagine, do you think that early man, according to science, did Neanderthals have a sense of personhood? In other words, could they attack with one hand the other hand, or not? So there's two levels. It could be that it just hurts and you stop, because it hurts in the same place, there's just one brain. But it could be that apart from that, it doesn't feel that these two things are connected. Maybe these two things are completely separate tentacles and they're not related to one another. We don't know. I mean, how do animals feel it? Do animals not attack themselves because they feel one? Or do they attack themselves when they need to because they don't have a feeling oneness, they just overcome the pain and that's it? But if I have to cut off my finger, it's like, it's my finger, what are you talking about? It's not a question of just pain. It's way beyond that. It's the unity that creates a personhood. So if we come to a state in which we feel each other to be parts of the same whole, of the same oneness of God, then of course there won't be wars. Lo yisa goy el goy cherev. The one nation will not be able to attack another. Because people will feel, they will experience why this is all one. It's not because Mashiach is going to come and explain how much better it is to have peace than it is to
You'll feel it.
You'll feel it. That's what he's saying. Of course, it might be also, before that, some preliminary times and periods of time when there are arguments for it. That's nice. So that's Chidusha Shel Torah. That's the new Torah that comes out. But he's saying much more than that. This is going to become an experience. Everything that is in the inner dimension of Torah will become an experience. And now we're going to beg forgiveness